Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. We're here today because we know the scourge of gun violence is upon our state. Suicide, mass shootings, domestic violence now take the lives of over 780 Washingtonians every single year. And amongst our young people, our young Washingtonians, it is the leading cause of death, which is obviously a huge tragedy. And I am proud of our state to be a state who is willing to take the lead to stand up against the NRA, to stand up for common sense gun safety legislation. And today we're saying that we are proud of communities who are fighting against gun violence, and we're proud that our state will now take further action today against gun violence. And the reason is simple. We are not willing to accept gun violence as a normal part of life in the state of Washington. And we will not allow this scourge of gun violence to wash across our state without taking action. Today, I'm proud to say we're taking action against gun violence. Now, this is of particular delight to me that we're taking action today in leading the country yet again and expressing the views of the vast majority of Washingtonians who believe that common sense gun safety legislation is the way we should move forward in the state of Washington. And it is a particular satisfaction to me because I first voted on this measure back in 1994. I was a one-term congressman then. I am a three-term governor now. And so it has been decades to make permanent this law in the state of Washington, and I think it shows Martin Luther King was right. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it does bend towards justice. Yeah. And this is ultimately a justice issue to prevent innocent lives from being taken by this scourge of gun violence. Now, we are here today because of the concerted, dedicated, and resolute efforts of thousands of Washingtonians, the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, and the number one grandmother, in my opinion, Trudy Inslee, who's been working on this for decades. Everytown, Cease Fire, that worked for years on similar legislation, the Mothers Against Violence in America under the leadership of Pan Eakes, who worked for decades to move forward. And the individuals who have shown courage, like the Parsons of Bainbridge Island, who lost their daughter in the mass shooting in Las Vegas, who turned their grief into action to lead this state forward against gun violence. Thank you to all of those who've shown personal courage and dedication to this effort. Now, we have a number of people to speak today. I want to start with Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who's been a steadfast partner against gun violence for years. And he specifically requested this large capacity magazine bill that I will be signing shortly. And I note that this is an attorney general, and I want to make this comment. It is on point because it's important. Frequently, people who disagree with measures that our community takes to keep us safe make some noise arguing that it's unconstitutional. They've done that about our common sense measures to save people from COVID 46 times, and Bob Ferguson has won 46 times in a row. And we look forward to him ably protecting the Constitution and common sense gun legislation in this regard, which has been affirmed by the Ninth Circuit of our federal courts. So with that, Bob, I look forward to your comments, and thanks for your leadership.
First, Governor, thank you for those kind words. And as the governor knows, when we just had a meeting the other day, he knows it's my team that really delivered those nearly 50 victories in a row, and many others, and many members of that team are here today. So they're the ones who are working hard, and on behalf of the people of the state of Washington, and it's an honor to work with all of them. Governor, let me just start with you, if that's okay, which is there's a lot of people to thank, and you thanked a number of them as well, but I think we can all agree, everybody can agree that this goes nowhere, banning high-capacity magazines, if we did not always know for every year of the last 6 years that if we could ever get that bill across the legislative finish line, there was a governor willing, ready, and excited to sign that bill into law. Thank you, Governor, for being there every step of the way. Number two, you mentioned some organizations, Governor, so I normally don't repeat those thank yous, but I will this time, just because those organizations have been front and center in all the individuals who make up those grassroots organizations. The Alliance for Gun Responsibility, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, Moms Demand Action, Washington Ceasefire, and many others. Give yourselves a huge round of applause for all of your grassroots work to make this happen. And the legislators are truly too numerous to mention. I think we can agree. But I will just say, look, many of you are here today, and thanks to each and every one of you throughout this many years process. Thanks to legislators who were in the legislature 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and are no longer in the legislature, who worked on this back then. Thanks to the new legislators who stepped up. So I won't mention any by name except for one. The process has been long enough, Governor, that one person worked on this issue as my legislative affairs director, and then became a state senator and was able to work on it as a state senator. That's Yasmin Trudeau. Yasmin, thank you for all your work. And of course, we've been proud as an office, as an AG's office, to propose this each of the last 6 years. My team, who's here, many members, they're the ones who just kept the faith throughout all those years. And I just want to thank my team for all their work on making this happen on the policy side. Thanks to each and every one of you. So, Governor, the only other thing I want to add is that, I've had many conversations with many Washingtonians, like you have, over my time in politics. Some conversations, a handful, really stand out as being a turning point in the way I think about an issue. And so I'm going to tell you a brief story about one of those conversations. When it came to banning high-capacity magazines 7 years ago or 6 years ago, I think it's fair to say I felt strongly about it. I supported that as a policy. I cared about it. But I wasn't waking up every morning saying, hey, what am I going to do today to make that happen, to get rid of those high-capacity magazines? And then, of course, we had the tragic shooting in Mukilteo 6 years ago. I remember that very clearly for many reasons, in part because I had a niece at the time who was at that school at the time. And that was a party of her classmates where that tragedy happened. And after that tragedy unfolded, and Anna Bowie, Jake Long, and Jordan Ebner all lost their lives, and others were badly injured, I had the great honor of meeting with some individuals who were impacted by that tragic event. And I remember in particular a conversation with a gentleman whose son had been injured and thankfully survived that shooting, Paul Kramer. Paul's here today. Paul, give a wave. And Governor, I remember sitting down and having a conversation with Paul, who I'd never met before. And, there's a lot I could say about that conversation, but, I'll never forget it. And I just remember the way he spoke about the impact on his son, the impact on him and his family, the impact on the wider community, which he always emphasized, the whole community, how it was impacted by that. It wasn't just about him and his impact and his loss. And, I just remember so clearly, Paul, right? I remember clearly thinking at some point during that conversation where I moved from caring about this issue in I don't want to say an abstract way, but in a, less concrete way, to thinking, damn it, we're just going to do this, right? And I'm going to put the full weight of my office behind this. That's what we're going to do. And I remember saying to Paul, before clearing with my staff, by the way, that I was going to propose this bill every year until it passed. That's what we were going to do. And Paul, I remember saying to you, I didn't think it passed the first year, right? But I didn't think it would take 6 years, to be honest with you, right? But there is no doubt in my mind, okay? There is no doubt in my mind, and I know everybody here agrees with me, that it is people like Paul Kramer ordinary, regular Washingtonians who suddenly find themselves face to face, with the most terrible news you could receive as a parent. Let's be honest, right? That's about as bad as it gets. And to not only have to handle that with grace, but be willing then to go to a press conference a week later down at our office and stand up in front of a bank of cameras. Some reporters were here today, by the way. And I remember, Paul, seeing reporters moved by your comments. And truly, I can say all the things I want to say, Governor. I suspect you can and legislators can, but when it's individuals who are directly impacted by gun violence, when they speak, politicians respond. I'm just saying, as one thankful politician, Paul, that I am so thankful I had the honor of meeting with you and you helping to motivate me to propose this bill 6 years in a row. So thank you. A round of applause to Paul and everybody else who's worked so hard. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker. My apologies for going on a little long, I suspect, but one of the many legislators who's played a key role in this. I've often said Marco Lias, who's going to speak next, when people ask me, hey, how the legislative process works, I say the one thing you got to have is a champion in the legislature. Yeah. Someone who's just going to move that bill. And there's a number of champions, and you are certainly one of them, State Senator Marco Lias.
I thank you, Bob, and thank you, Governor, for your leadership on this. I appreciated the comments about Jacob, Jordan, and Anna, about Paul and Will, because that's honestly what brought me to this issue. I'm a lifelong Mukilteo resident, went to the same high school as Jacob, Jordan, and Anna, and like everybody in Mukilteo, had my sense of safety shattered in July of 2016. And as Bob shared, we had the opportunity, so many of us, to meet with the families of those impacted. And I remember sitting at the Rose Hill Community Center with the Ebners and Autumn Snyder and others and saying, we are going to do something to make sure no other community has to go through what we've gone through. And it's just such a tremendous honor and privilege to have been a part of this fight, to make sure that future communities, future families, future parents don't have to experience the horror of July 2016 in Mukilteo. And this has been an incredible journey, and I certainly want to continue to extend my thanks to Paul Kramer. I met Paul as a Parks and Arts Commissioner when I was first elected to the City Council in Mukilteo, and never imagined that our relationship would take so many twists and turns. But I've watched Paul and his family and their leadership and their courage and their determination. But I also want to lift up the families of Anna Bowie and Jordan Ebner and Jake Long, folks who aren't as used to the spotlight of politics, not that Paul and I are, but not as used to it, and the quiet words of strength and encouragement that I've received over the course of this long struggle. I'm proud. When we look at the national evidence, it suggests that states that pass a high-capacity magazine ban demonstrably have a lower level of violence and death moving forward. Today is not a day for political slogans and for us to make points. Today is a day that we will make Washington a safer place for families, for communities, for children, and we will make sure that nobody else needs to go through what we went through. I also want to thank the amazing team in the Senate that helped me get this here. Senator Patty Kuderer has been a long and dedicated champion. Yeah, a round of applause for Senator Kuderer. When we first started this journey, the chair of the Law and Justice Committee was a fellow named Jamie Peterson, who then became our floor leader and made sure we got a vote on this bill. So thank you to Senator Peterson. Of course, our chair this year, Senator Dhingra, brings a law enforcement and prosecutorial background that just helped really advance this. And I'm going off script, but my soul sister, Senator Trudeau, who not only helped push this from the outside, but from the moment she joined the Senate, has been an incredible partner and encouragement in this work. I really appreciate Senator Trudeau's advocacy here. And we are not alone in the Senate. There's an incredible cadre of our colleagues in the House of Representatives. My seatmates, Representatives Strom Peterson, Lillian Ortiz-Self, of course, but I want to introduce someone who has her own story of surviving gun violence and who's been an incredible champion for gun responsibility in a very short time in the House of Representatives. That is one of our new representatives, Representative Liz Berry.
So 11 years ago, my life changed forever. It was a bright, sunny January morning in Tucson, Arizona, when a gunman opened fire at a constituent event of my boss and mentor, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. My friend and colleague, Gabe Zimmerman, was killed. My other colleagues, Ron and Pam, were shot. 5 other people died that day. 18 people were shot within just minutes, and law enforcement later recovered 31 shell casings at the scene. The reason that there was such a mass amount of people hurt and killed in such a short amount of time is because the shooter had a semi-automatic weapon with high-capacity magazines. And it wasn't until he had to reload his weapon that 4 brave bystanders were able to tackle him to the ground. Gun violence is preventable, and the bills that Governor Inslee is going to sign today will save lives. As lawmakers, I believe we must do everything we can to end gun violence in our communities, and that's why I was so proud to bring the Ghost Gun bill this year that will ban untraceable homemade ghost guns. And these guns are so dangerous because we have no way of tracing them, and people can get them without a background check. That's why they are utilized by gun traffickers. And between 2016 and 2020, law enforcement recovered nearly 24,000 ghost guns from potential crime scenes. And we know there are so many more out there that aren't being counted. I am so proud to be a part of this historic day. I am so proud to do this work in memory of my friend Gabe and all of the people that are silenced by gun violence in our communities every day. Thank you. And now I am so proud to introduce my friend, Representative Tonneson.
I am thrilled to be here today, and obviously saddened that we need to be here today. But to be among these amazing gun responsibility advocates is really heartwarming. And over the years that I've been in the legislature, and since 2006, when I was involved with the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle, when there was a shooting there, I've become so close with so many families who have experienced gun violence. Cheryl Stumbo, Paul Kramer, Alice, Jane, Rebecca, Renee. It's really, again, heartwarming and sad that we have to form a community and that we can form a community of those who have lost loved ones or been affected directly themselves. 3 years ago, a swarm of heavily armed folks came down to the state capitol, and they were wandering around the hallways in our building along campus. And frankly, they were terrifying legislators and staff and school tour groups and other constituents who were down advocating and just trying to access their government. So despite it being the end of the session, I introduced a bill to ban the open carry of weapons on our state capitol. It wasn't until the next year that we passed it. Thank you, Senator Couture. But it really was the start of recognizing that we need to protect access to democracy. And with the pandemic, that has only been more clear. And having local governments be able to be protected just like our state is now is what really moved me to introduce House Bill 1630. So, as you may know, the bill that the governor is going to sign today, 1630, will prohibit open carry of weapons at local government meetings, at off-campus school board meetings, at election-related sites. And then guns will be completely banned at school board meetings on campus and at ballot counting sites. No one should be prevented from accessing their government due to fear of armed intimidation. That is just not okay. Not our elected officials, not our constituents, not our children, and not our election staff and volunteers. With elections results becoming a favorite target of conspiracy theorists, banning guns at ballot counting sites is necessary to protect our election officials and volunteers and our democracy. And special thanks to my colleague, Representative April Berg, who helped lead this part of the policy. And sadly, I'm also here to tell you that it is not just a hypothetical that we're talking about. As a state representative, a former city council member, as someone personally affected by gun violence, I can tell you that these concerns are very real. And a recent study by the National League of Cities found that 80% of local elected officials have experienced harassment, violence, and intimidation in just the past few years. And it's getting worse with the pandemic. This legislation, again, thank you, Governor Inslee, this law will keep our elected officials and constituents safe, prevent the dangerous escalation of heated debates, and help people feel comfortable coming forward to address their government without fear of armed intimidation. After all, it is words and debate, not fear and violence, that make for a successful democracy. Thank you.
Trudy, could you join me? Trudy's been standing for this for 30 years. I think she deserves to be able to stand here now. Before I sign these bills, I wanted to make a comment or two about the general concept here. Representative Sen talked about democracy, and I think it's important to talk about democracy in a moment. We are seeing in our community, you know, legitimate arguments about election results, which are actually not legitimate. We're seeing arguments about how we respond to COVID. There's arguments about this issue. I think we ought to realize we're lucky in our state and our nation to have a way to resolve these issues. And there may be questions about the constitutionality of this. It has been affirmed in the Ninth Circuit. But there may be questions. I think we should take joy that we have a judicial system to respond to these questions and realize that these questions need to be resolved in the courts, not on the streets. The people who attacked our Capitol on January 6th, the people who try to intimidate people with assault weapons on the lawn of our Capitol, the people who came and stormed and broke down the gates of the governor's residence several months ago and brought their long guns to my lawn, those folks need to respect the judicial system that can actually answer these questions. And I can tell you this, those folks who broke down our gates and come onto my lawn, they did not intimidate me, I will tell you that. That's why I'm signing these bills today. Take it to the courts. That's the way to resolve these issues. The second thing I want to say is, this is a triumph, I believe, in democracy because the will of the vast majority of Washingtonians are being followed with the passage of these bills. For too long, narrow segments of folks have blocked the majority will when it comes to saving us from this mass violence. And the joy that exists to reduce this violence is significant. I was on the floor of the House. I was standing right next to the door, the entrance to the U.S. House of Representatives years ago, when I turned around and there was Representative Gabby Giffords making her first public appearance essentially since she was shot in this mass shooting. And at that moment, the entire House of Representatives erupted in a cheer. It was the most magical moment the whole time I was in Congress. I believe the same sentiment exists now, that we are acting against gun violence to save ourselves and our children. It is the majority opinion of the state of Washington. Now, if I can turn to these bills. Senate Bill 5078, it restricts access to large capacity magazines in Washington to help reduce the number of horrific fatalities and injuries in mass shooting events. We know these laws work. From 1994 to 2004, when there was a federal ban on assault weapons and large capacity magazines, which I had voted for, mass shooting fatalities declined. Since then, states that have adopted laws banning large capacity magazines have been able to save lives. Of the 47 mass shootings in this country from 2005 to 2017, 39 occurred in states without a large capacity magazine ban law. Additionally, states without a ban on large capacity magazines have more deaths per incident than those states with this ban. We know why this is. Limiting these magazine sizes increases the chance for a break for an opportunity to stop this chain of violence. When an active shooter has to stop and reload, it gives potential victims a crucial chance to escape or even disarm the shooter. We know these types of policies are effective, and we know that they save lives. And I want to thank everybody and their efforts personally and as a group, and all our legislators and the Attorney General. And with that, I'm happy to sign this bill. Now we have House Bill 1705. This bill will help us address the alarming rise of ghost guns in our communities. Law enforcement officers report a rise in the use of these untraceable homemade guns, where ownership cannot be traced through serial numbers or where serial numbers were removed. Tens of thousands of these guns have been recovered from crime scenes in the past 5 years. This bill does allow enthusiasts and hobbyists to continue making guns at home as long as they use components with serial numbers. Thank you, Representative Berry. With that, I'm signing this bill. Can we get another pen? Can you give me another one? Give me another pen. House Bill 1630 reduces the intimidation people feel when trying to participate in civic activities where people are brandishing firearms. This bill restricts weapons to certain locations, which include school board meetings, election official offices, and other local government buildings, unless you're a law enforcement member or military member. Concealed permit license holders can still carry firearms when attending city council meetings. This bill is designed to make everyone feel safe when attending school board meetings or when engaged in voting or ballot counting activities. Happy to sign this bill. Thanks, Representative Sen, for your leadership. You got one? I'm doing this one. It's this one. I signed it with 2 pens, one for the representative, one for Trudy. So. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Be safe. Be well.